G'day, Professor Joseph Drew here. As I keep reminding you, this is the most challenging environment of a generation for local government. We've got high inflation, it's here to stay, it's sticky. We've also got other problems to deal with as well. Now, there's two ways that we can respond to this. One is to put up our fees and charges and our taxes by enough to cover our increasing costs. Another way is to reduce our costs. Now, an innovative thought that came to me the other day is shrinkflation an option? In this video, I'll explain what shrinkflation is. I'll start talking about where it could and could not be used. This is a brand new idea. I've never heard of anyone talking about it in relation to government. So work with me, and I really look forward to hearing your comments on this concept. Thank you very much. So, what is shrinkflation, apart from a really cool word for Scrabble? It's something you probably noticed in the grocery store more. It's when the size of your product is reducing, not the price. So the price stays constant, but all of a sudden you find your chocolate bar smaller, or you find your packet of chips is smaller, or your size of your soft drink is smaller. Now, as I said before, there's two ways to skin a cat to maintain sustainability. In the case of corporations here, they're trying to keep their profit margins. We can either reduce our costs by reducing the ingredients we put into the product, i.e. making it smaller, shrinking the product, or we can increase our costs, increase our prices, increase our revenue. Shrinkflation has a sort of good element about it when you think about it. If I was to put up the price of the chocolate bar, it might mean that some people can't afford chocolate bars anymore. Some people prefer shrinkflation because they can still afford the chocolate bar, they're just getting a little bit less. And of course, from a health perspective, it's probably a good idea anyway. But local government isn't like other businesses. In fact, it's not a business, it's government, as I've said in other videos. And we can't shrink a lot of things. You know, for instance, if your local government's a rural one, you provide water, and you're charging per kilolitre of water, you've still got to provide a kilolitre of water. You can't shrink that. Your roads, you can't shrink your road network. It's pretty well fixed. You might be able to shrink the overhang. I'd have to get an engineer to tell me about whether that's reasonable or not when there's a large overhang. You'd have to look at safety issues. You might be able to shrink how often you maintain that road, but if that's a bitumen road, that's going to set up a liability for the future, because eventually you're going to have to maintain that road. So I guess you can shrink roads, but it's not a good thing, because really all you're doing is racking up implicit liabilities that a future generation is going to have to pay for. So neither of those things are going to, if these things are going to help your financial sustainability position. But there are other services that local government could shrink that would help their financial sustainability. Now, I'm not saying you should do these things. This is all part of a wider conversation. You need to make the trade-off because your options are increase revenue or reduce costs. And shrinking things is one way of reducing costs. Reducing service levels, such as reducing the frequency that you mow parks at, that you mow cemeteries at. That can reduce some direct costs in terms of your equipment costs and your fuel. It could also reduce your staff costs if you've got casuals and part-timers involved, and you can change those hours. It's not as reactive as you might like, because most of our staff are full-time, so you're probably only saving on the wear and tear and the machinery and the fuel costs, but it is one way of shrinking things. Do you have to mow as frequently? Would people be prepared to put up with slightly longer grass if it meant there was less pressure on council to extract more revenue from them? Here's another example where we might be able to shrink things. And I'm sure you can think of more examples and better examples. I'm just getting this conversation started. This is something no one's ever really talked about with local government before. So I'm having trouble getting my head around it too. Opening hours for libraries, particularly if you've got casual staff involved. But you've got your lighting costs and things like that when libraries are open. Could you reduce your opening hours? Particularly those late night ones, particularly if there's any penalty rates involved. Particularly during seasons where you do have high energy costs. When, it's not closing until after dark or when it's particularly cold. Could we change these hours, shrink the amount of services available, and would that have an important effect on revenue? As I said, I won't have that immediate effect because usually your staff are going to be full-time or part-time and you can't adjust those hours straight away. But over time, you could perhaps adjust those hours, get those library staff to maybe work in the office and displace the need to get new office staff in, or to replace office staff when they retire or resign. Both of these cases, it's not quite like those grocery items we looked at before. You don't shrink your services and get an immediate big boost as a reduction in expenditure. Both of them, you're going to get an immediate boost and reduction of some cost, but that's your fuel and your maintenance and the energy cost, but they're pretty minor in terms of the cost of providing those services. The big boost is going to come later on when you've had time to adjust your staffing accordingly, and that will provide boosts. So I hope you found this video interesting. This is all part of a big conversation we've got to have about financial sustainability. Hopefully you've been watching my other videos, and videos about fiscal illusion and how to price things properly and how to determine with your community what they consider to be a satisfactory standard of infrastructure maintenance and issues such as this. But it's certainly something we need to think about. I think we all, including me, need to think a lot more about the potential for shrinkflation to be part of our answer, because if inflation is moving double digits, like the Bank of England's just said, they think it's quite likely that they'll get double-digit inflation. We won't want to put up our rates, fees and charges by double digits. It's going to hurt our community. Maybe the answer is to reduce our costs by reducing the size of the services that we provide. Maybe that's part of the solution. So look, if you found this video helpful, please do me a favor, subscribe. Lots of people are watching these videos. That's great. We have well over 400 views most month. I don't have well over 400 subscribers. I'd love to get them. It makes it easier for me to justify to my employer why I spend time doing these videos. And look, send it around. I just want to start a conversation. I just want to help local government. As I keep saying, this will be the most challenging era in my lifetime for local government. And I want you all to survive. I want your communities to prosper and to flourish. And we can only do that if we all pitch in and help. And this is my way of helping. Help me to help others by flicking this around and subscribing. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.